Hey, welcome back to the Harbor. I'm your host, the Kino Cowboy. I'm with my co-host, Scott Keith. Today, we're doing our second De Palma film of the show. We did Phantom of the Paradise a few years ago, one of my favorites. Now we're doing Blowout, one of his I hadn't seen. I think that's the only two we've done on this show.
I believe so, and I wasn't even on the Phantom of the Paradise episode. I was traveling or doing something. I don't remember.
Yeah, you were. And I did talk about his baffling Mission to Mars Disney movie that he made in the 2000s
Oh,
on one
you
of
did
my
talk about that.
video
I,
essays.
yeah, and I feel like it's more interesting because I've been to Disney World and done Mission Space, which is like a spiritual successor to that, and also the most literally nauseating experience of motion sickness that
But
you get.
it's just like, how did anyway?
No, it's well, that's something as De Palma. Um, like he is one of those guys who does he still have it? Like, what was the last good movie or like well received movie that he did? Because it feels like his early run, it was like this and Carly. I've only seen this and Carrie and Scarface, and I'll be honest, out of those three, I really like this movie, Blowout, 1981 that we're doing. Carrie, it was like okay at the time when I watched it. Maybe I need to rewatch it. And then Scarface is kind of baffling in hindsight. I mean, it's just bloated, and
I want to
Al
have
Pacino.
like a different take on Scarface than you, but I've only seen it on TV like 12, 13 years ago, so I don't have the proper take on it that I'd like.
Right.
Because
Well,
I feel
I actually saw it in theaters a few months ago, and the problem is I saw it with actual Latinos, and then you have Al Pacino doing his thing, and it feels ridiculous. Go on.
it depends, because like you have that, but you also have Nacho Libre, which is heavily celebrated in the
Right. No,
Mexican
but that's
community.
done for laughs. The
I
whole
know, I
joke is
know.
that it's like, why did we cast Jack Black? Because it's stupid and fun.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me look at real quick.
But no, his entire later filmography, like he hasn't released much of note really in the 21st century. I mean, he did Black Dahlia, which I think was like considered okay. Was his last great film LA Confidential? Because I had kind of written off
Oh,
Brian De Palma as like, oh, he's just not me before I watched this movie.
oh no, no. You got to see um Body Double.
Yeah, I
You
gotta
got to
see
see
that. I gotta
Phantom of
see
the
Mission Impossible.
Paradise,
No, it's one of
Dress
those
to
things,
Kill.
but he's so hit or miss,
I
you know.
need to see Carlito's Way. I would argue he's not insanely hit or miss. You've just seen a couple
I
of, I don't know.
I think I'm just like, and people love Carrie as a thing, and maybe it was just like my headspace when I watched it years ago. So, um, I don't know. I guess I had written off Brian De Palma as overrated, which is insane because I know a lot of people consider him the greatest director of his generation or one of. He's also, which is insane to say because like he's part of that whole new Hollywood movement with more auteur-driven stuff going in the wake of TV taking more and more market share from movie theaters. If only we had that sort of return to auteur driven film in our current parallel climate of TV taking box office numbers, but whatever. People don't even know what movies are coming out. I think that's part of the problem. I've realized that if you're not into it, like you or me or some nerd watching this channel, like there's just too much stuff, and Hollywood doesn't dictate the media and like what people pay attention to. So just getting the ideas of certain movies coming out in front of people's faces is, I mean, that's why you have to use IP. So they're like, oh, it's that versus like, oh, here, let me like go to this new Steven Soderbergh movie.
Even if it's enough to be like, oh, I think I've heard of that. That's enough for studios to be like, hey,
It's no, it's and part of the context is I started a part-time job in a movie theater, and like people, I mean, first of all, sometimes people will walk in, they'll just be like, what movies are playing, which is insane to me in the era of smartphones that people are still doing that, but whatever. And I explain it to them. But like people just looking at the poster and coming up to me is like, oh, when's that new 28 Days Later movie coming out? Like that's all they do is they see 28 years later on a poster and they're like, oh, I remember that from when I was in college or whatever.
yeah.
So that's why you don't get movies like Blowout, which is apparently not a remake, but heavily inspired by Blowup by Antonioni, a guy I'm not very familiar with, if I'm just being honest. Um, but it's one of my favorite sort of tropes. I just learned the name for it, is the wrong man trope, where you're the wrong man at the right time, or however you want to say it, where
Yeah.
you just like happen to witness a murder or happen
Yeah.
to, you know, De Palma gets compared to Hitchcock a lot, and this one, it makes me think of Rear Window immediately.
Yeah, sure.
Um, except more involved and not just a single location and way darker. Way darker. But I love that idea of just a random guy, stumbling into a conspiracy or a crime or something like that and kind of having to solve it. Um, and this, of course, like a not a new Hollywood in a lot of movies, this era is on the tail of this like post Watergate, post Vietnam distrust in the government sort of things, which is where that's the conspiracy. Because De Palma's obsessed with like the Zapruder tape, which is of the Kennedy assassination. He was obsessed with Kennedy assassination
The
theories.
first real gore I ever saw.
Was the Kennedy tape?
Yeah.
You saw that? When? How old were you?
I don't know. Middle school?
Oh, okay. I thought you were, I don't know. For some reason I thought you were like 6 and watching the Kennedy
I
assassination.
mean, being 12 is not much better to me.
It's, well, I don't know. I figured you might have seen some. I guess maybe my first gore was like stickpage.com, where it was all like stick figures getting like blown up
I'm
and
talking about real video, like
yeah, but
real
that stuff
gore.
really bothered me at the time. Now I'm too desensitized.
Yeah, I was actually, my friends would play that some edgy Super Mario Flash game that
Oh
was
yeah, the Super Mario Rampage or whatever
maybe, I don't know. I just
back
remember
then.
Toad's head flying off and blood coming out, and I was disturbed as a small child.
Yeah, dude. Well, you were a
Like,
coward.
I should not be on this website.
You couldn't cut it, dude. You couldn't cut it on Newgrounds, the OG.
Some new grounds, yes.
Okay. But De Palma, why'd you decide this movie of all De Palma's?
Because I know a lot of people that like it. And
All right.
it was De Palma. I was like, I haven't seen enough De Palma.
No, me
I,
neither.
I've seen
Clearly.
more than you, but still, there's like so many of his classics I'm just missing. And it's like, I think I had recently rewatched the first Mission Impossible with my brother, and De Palma was just in my head. I was like, I need to explore him more.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, what do you think of John Travolta? What is your opinion on John Travolta as a man and as an actor?
Well, I think he fell off and he's a Scientologist, and I think he kicks ass in his early career.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be the only real take you can have
I mean,
about.
I'm a big Grease guy. Me and Casher love Grease. That's one of my favorite musicals. So
Yeah, no, you love Grease. I think I'm hum ho on Grease. It's fine. I mean, it's good. It's well made, but I'm not like a Grease guy. But no, it's this weird thing where like I see John Travolta in this, and I'm thinking like, man, this might be the best Travolta performance I've seen. It's one of
that's
certainly,
totally fair, I think.
and to think that he was in like The Fanatic a few years, that was in 2019. Time flies. I mean, the only thing I'm looking at his IMDb that I've recognized from since 2019 is the Capital One Christmas ad where he's dressed as Santa Claus and
Dude,
he's going down like it's Saturday Night Fever, like
that was so embarrassing to see. They showed that in the movie theaters when I went to see Wicked with my family, and I was just I felt like covering my eyes because it was such an embarrassing ad to me. And my mom was like laughing. She's like, "Oh my God, it's like Saturday Night Fever." And I was like, "Oh my God."
it's one of those, dude. That's how I felt. That's, they might be able to hear me, but I don't care. That's how I felt about my roommates cracking up at a Super Bowl ad where it was the singer Seal, but he was actually like a CG seal, and they thought that was like so
Dude,
funny. And I was
people
I was
thought, most people thought that was atrocious and baffling. So I don't know.
yeah, I thought it was like, let's make the most obvious joke we can, but like
Yeah.
spin
Which,
money.
speaking of Super Bowl ads, where it's like, we brought shit back from 30 years ago. A lot of people, I was kind of happy to see a lot of people when that Happy Gilmore trailer came out yesterday. Everyone was like, it looks like a fake ad from the Super Bowl. I'm like, that's where we're at right now. So,
I think a lot of audiences are getting just like sick of stuff. I do wonder what I forget the name of it. That new Russo brothers movie based on those like Swedish memes I saw. That
Electric
painter,
State, yeah.
yeah, Electric State. I do wonder how many people are actually watching that and what the engagement is, and how many people are finishing the movie, or if they're just spent $300 million to have something on in the background. Anyway, going back to this, yeah, I'm looking at his filmography, and John Travolta. It looks like the last a movie of his that I think got any sort of positive acclaim that I remember was The Taking of Pelham 123, that remake that came out in '09. And
Yeah.
also in '08, he was Bolt in Bolt, the superhero dog
Oh, he
movie.
was in that Hairspray
He
remake.
was in Hairspray in '07.
Yeah.
He was also in Wild Hogs in '07, which is
Oh,
not.
yeah, dude. That notoriously big stinker.
Oh yeah, no, I watched that. It's funny, even as a kid, I was into like reading movie reviews and stuff. My papa, we bonded over movies. He was like, "Hey, I got this movie we could watch," and I was too nice to be like, "This movie's gonna suck," and it did, but not in an interesting way. It was just
Yeah.
bland. It's just a bunch of obvious jokes. Um, he was in a TV series called Fat Actress. Dude, that was 2005. Imagine trying to make that today. All right, I'm getting distracted by IMDb.
Anyway,
He's
I
so good in this
I
book.
knew the concept vaguely. I
Sure.
try to go in blind to some of the movies we do on here I know pretty well.
Hmm.
Some of them lately I've been running out of my favorite stuff to do on the show, so a lot lately have been first watches for both of us.
Yeah,
But so like the opening, I was like, what the hell kind of sleazo Halloween movie is this? And
I because I'm so intelligent, I got what was going on as soon as I saw it because I knew the log line of like a movie sound guy uncovers a murder. So I figured like they're doing Halloween first of all in the
they're doing a
PO,
sleazy ripoff
yeah,
Halloween.
sleazy ripoff of Halloween.
But I was just like, for a second, I was like, wait, what did I put on? Like, okay. But it's such a like at first you think it's just gonna be kind of a setup just to show him what he does for a living. Oh, he does audio foley for a sleazy company that churns out cheapo pictures like co-ed
Five
frenzy.
movies in 2 years, they said. And
Yeah,
they all have the word blood in the title. They name all these things. It's like,
except for this one, which is called co-ed frenzy,
oh
which is
yeah, dude.
awesome. But the funny part is like I was still down. I was like, I'm gonna see what he's gonna do with this. But if when I first thought it was just a setup for his character, I was like, okay, this is the backdrop. This is where he works. Okay, the way it ties in thematically and also into the plot simultaneously at the end astounded me. It was just like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, we're jumping way ahead of our
I know.
hell
I just have to
selves.
say that right off the bat.
Obviously, spoilers if you haven't seen this movie, but like, this is one of the best movie endings of all time. It just is. It's
Yeah.
great thematically, from a character perspective, from a like suspense drama payoff perspective. It's all brilliant. And I mean, what's crazy about this scene is like it's a sleazy like Z movie, but it has Brian De Palma quality cinematography because they're going through with the steady. It's the guy, I forget his name, the guy who invented the steady cam worked on this movie.
Okay.
And he worked on this right after The Shining. And he said it was really weird going from The Shining to, okay, now we're going to make a fake movie called Coed Frenzy. And he was like, all right, completely different style. But that was funny to me. Like you'd expect like really crappy camera work, but then there's like all this really good steady cam work, even if it's all for sleazy schlock. But to me, that's because he's been accused of being like misogynist or objectifying women or all that. Da, da, da. I think he plays with that a lot in this movie and plays with the expectations and tropes of like suspense movies and noir. This is considered neo noir. Made me think of Chinatown because we covered that a few weeks ago, which is like the neo noir film. Um, and I really think he's just playing with the audience's expectations. And I saw an interview. I recommend anybody look it up after this of Noah Baumbach interviewing De Palma. It's on the Criterion disc for this bonus features. And he said, like, yeah, we were laughing that whole sequence. Like every day we shot that sequence, we were like, what if we have a woman pleasing herself in this? Like, how can we make it more ridiculous and stupid and sleazy? You know?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then he even said, like, the guy who's caught in a mirror at one point, he was even like, yeah, and that guy seemed a little out of it too, which worked, but he was weird. Stuff like that. But it's all really, it's like a great setup to a great punchline of like the worst terrible scream ever.
It
Uh,
was really like I immediately laughed before it panned out to show that it was them watching the footage. It was
right. So it's weird. It's hard to do that because I feel like a lot of movies that like try too hard to be schlocky end up being like part of the reason The Room is so fun is because you know the guy was earnest making it.
yeah.
And if you have people who are like trying to make a bad movie, it just doesn't work that way. There's not that other layer.
Next
It's
week on The Harbor, Space Cop by Red Letter Media.
yeah. Or what Bad Shark, that movie that Tommy Wiseau did that come out? Who cares?
No, it's
Um
just Big Shark.
Big Shark. Oh, okay, whatever. Um but he does it so well. Um, and I feel like again, Travolta's so good in this. Like, I get the sense of who he is. He's this guy who's like probably too talented for what he does. But he's also knows it's beneath him kind of in his talents. So he kind of has this blasé attitude about it. Or like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you this is garbage. It's gonna sound like yeah, that's almost like what he wants to say at some point. And then he has this thing of like, I must imagine it must be like this with sound people of like, I've heard these stock sounds so much. Even I do it with something like certain sound. Wilhelm scream's obvious one, but even stuff like there's certain sounds of like horses or children giggling or things like that. Like I recognize like that
There's a
must be that.
specific metal door opening that is reused that I hate because it's like, where are you guys getting this sound effect? Stop using it.
Yeah.
If I
It's
find it, I'll insert it right here, right now.
the
But
um
oh my God.
But what's really, and it's also interesting to me because, like, I feel this whole movie, I feel like more people have an idea of what sound editing and sound mixing is just because, like, Pro Tools and Audacity and, like, all these things, so many of these tools, like, all sort of, dare I say it, content creation has been democratized and, like, no, everybody has a camera, da 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 da. But, like, it's really interesting to me watching this analog filmmaking, which we're both as millennials interested in.
Yeah, the idea of having to have specific tapes for specific sounds instead of just having a folder on my desktop is brutal.
Yeah, and the amount of work that's job security though,
I
baby.
know.
It's and I'm not organized enough, dude. I would be like, I don't know, I forgot to label this tape. I don't know. This could either be like a blood curdling scream or like me accidentally recording myself take a shit. Like it could be one of the two. I have no idea. But it's it's really interesting because I don't know how much audiences like knew because there's one point where he has to explain to Sally what his job is, and like even nowadays, I don't know how much the average audience member thinks about like sound and sound mixing and editing on film, but like back then, maybe even less so. Maybe not. I don't know.
I think it's more now because there are certain accounts I see on TikTok, Foley artists that show off how they create sounds for certain scenes in movies that
Mhm.
people are astounded by. And it's just, I mean, that's the magic of movies, though. If you're not a filmmaker, you don't know how it works. It just, you go in there and it's a magical experience, you know? A lot of people don't pick apart every aspect. I get that. And it's
No, but that's
kind of a
why we're here.
beautiful thing. I know, but it's just like, I don't know. It's like the same thing with I'm not someone who understands fully how the touch screen of my phone works, you know. I just kind of go with it.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know.
no,
But
it's magic. It's magic. That's
that
all it
is
is.
one of the more interesting aspects of like also the horror of seeing how much tape he has in that room upstairs. But also the undercurrent through the movie is like the director he works for is like trying to get the perfect scream for this one scene of this movie that he's churned out five of in the last 2 years, but he's like so bent on finding the right scream. It's like, who gives a shit, dude? Just go with something. And like it adds to the stress of Travolta's character so well. Like he's trying to solve a murder mystery and this guy's bothering with it. That's like one of my favorite aspects of the movie, easily.
No, it is. If played differently, it could almost be slapstick. It could almost be
Yeah.
like The Graduate or something, like trying to juggle all these different things.
Yeah.
Because also I'm also like, what kind of job does he have where he can just kind of not do it for like a week while he investigates this murder? I don't know. So
Well, it's post production, so they can work on other aspects of the film that they already have stuff recorded for. So,
yeah, this stuff like that. He'd be like,
but
oh, I'm working.
clearly they need him. But yeah,
No, he's the most competent guy in the whole building. You can tell that.
yeah,
But so much of it is like I don't know what it is because like John Travolta, he can be made fun of for like overacting, but when he's really reined in like this, he does have this like smoldering energy. Not to mention just the perfect jaw, and dimple, and then also there's something about like he's not quite lanky, but he has like these limbs that move. I mean, he's a dancer, so like even every way he moves, the way he like lifts up his microphone when he's on the bridge and like moves it so gracefully, it makes all of his movements and expressions so much more interesting just because he's so well coordinated in that regard. I mean, it makes a difference.
yeah. When he's on that Brett on the bridge recording audio, it's like my 2025 brain. That couple's like, ew, what is this guy? Is he like a weirdo? But in my brain, I'm like, this guy has a gun. He's about to fucking shoot us. What the hell is he doing?
Well, that's something, dude. Like a lot of cities, I don't know about Philadelphia. Philadelphia is pretty rough today still. I know like New York's way safer than it was. So like in 1980 in some park at night in Philadelphia, dude, I'm not going to do a park at night in Philadelphia now ever. No, no way. And I wouldn't do it in the 80s, I don't think either. So I don't know. I don't know how Philadelphia was back then. I mean, I saw it in Rocky, which was only a few years before this, so I don't. That's my frame of reference
Yeah.
for Philadelphia is Rocky and the Constitution. That's all I know. I haven't been.
Now, I've only seen 4 or 5 of his films, but even then, I know that the man likes split diopter shots. But
Right. And
in this one, it's like there's a lot. It's like,
yeah, and I was do some research before this, and I had to learn what that was.
oh,
'Cause
okay,
I'd seen the technique, I recognized the technique, I knew what
yeah,
it was, but I was like, what is the name of this? Like, what is going on? And so the what split diopter? What is it again? Say it again.
split diopter.
Split diopter. So if you don't know and you're watching this, um, what it is it's a type of lens that basically has two focal lengths on it. Like one side of the lens has one focal length and another has another, and that way you can essentially have two planes of focus. So you can have something really close up to the camera and then something far away from the camera. I'm doing that backwards, but they're both in focus given the film technology of the time, like almost jarringly so, in a way that your eyes would never do. And there's a little bit of distortion between the two planes usually. So, like, it has this dual thing of like, yes, it forces you to like look at it's like, hey, look at both of these images, they're both important. Like look at the TV here, it's not just on in the background, this is also something you the audience should be paying attention to, something like
Yeah,
that. But then also it does give this like otherworldly uncanny effect,
yeah, and
because this whole like
the way the lens is, they have to, 'cause the
mm,
way it's split, you often have to try and hide the split naturally. And I don't, they may have just like uh matted it out or something, colored it out, but
yeah,
it
and
was,
he said they try to like put on the edges of objects or dark
yeah,
shadows, things like that.
it looked
I mean,
great.
it's almost like a seam. Think of it as like the seam in like a folded piece of paper. Like it's an imperfection that you need to like gloss over. But I mean, he used that a lot because this whole movie's about it's about like filmmaking and that, but I also think it's about how like media can misrepresent and manipulate reality, which we really got like after like the Vietnam War, how the media like exposed certain things, how like for a while we thought the war was going a lot better for the US than it was because of the way the media was working with the government, and then certain things came out. Um, and you even get that in this film because there's so much focus like on TV broadcasts. You get all this information and you're not aware what parts of the information are relevant, because we hear about this like gubernatorial candidate and all this stuff. But throughout the movie, we keep hearing these news broadcasts. And so it's just re-emphasizing like how much of our reality is, I mean, I guess mediated through media, and he's, I don't know what De Palma's stance is on it. It feels to me like he's more just playing around with the ideas, but he's definitely saying like a lot of our reality is distorted, and that like finding out what capital T truth is so it's impossible. I mean, even more so today. I was talking with my uncle who's a doctor, and he says he can't do it anymore. He had to convince a kid that he didn't mess up his jaw by mewing. So, like, I don't know. We're done. We're done. And the kid was mad at him for not knowing what mewing is. He's like, this is not a medically accepted practice. Anyway,
That aspect that you talked about is represented physically through the film because it like the guy who shot the footage of the wreck has it air on TV, and then that TV footage is printed into a magazine frame by frame, and then he has to take those frames, print them out, take them into an animation area department of his place, and then capture those frame by frame and then put them together.
yeah, which the amount of work it takes, like, no wonder millennials are called lazy. We can just do everything on a computer. But I mean, again, and that's something like that De Palma straight up got from like Kennedy footage of like going through different photo and like
Yeah,
like trying to sync videos. Like, oh, was there a second shot on the grassy knoll? Which I'm sure like it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like directly meant to be that, but I'm sure anybody watching at this time, like, you would be of the generation that was, alive when that happened and that like came of age. So, I mean, you would probably, I think most of the audience, a lot of the audience would be able to draw that connection.
sure. Especially like the way he's just an audio man. Like he gets deep into this and
But
there's
we
like
learned he had a life before this. But go
I
on.
know, yeah, but it's like this guy's not a professional. Like, yeah, you learn that he was with cops and he helped cops with investigations and stuff, but he just did the audio for sting operations and stuff. So he's not like a
He's not a private
traditional,
eye.
he's not an action man. And when the action ramps up, you see him actually fault. He doesn't just actually become like a superhero, which I liked, which I was worried about at the end. I was,
No, that's what's so compelling about it is it's really like you or me if we stumbled across some audio of a murder and the police wouldn't listen to us, like what would we do? Like, would we try to solve it? Would we not?
and how frustrating it is for him in this analog world of tape. And you have this proof, but it's hard to get it out to anyone. And then you want to line it up with the footage. And like you already see what he had to go through just to get the copy of the footage. And like that devastating moment when his entire office is wiped because it's all magnetic.
Yeah, when John Lithgow, like a kid with a magnet in the TV, he just like goes through with the big toy magnet or whatever he does to destroy all that. I don't know what he does. It is funny because this is like pre Footloose. John Lithgow, I think he was known. He was in he was in no, what was that movie we watched? Not Being There, All That Jazz. Before this, but like
Yeah.
he wasn't a household name yet. So it is funny, like we see his face kind of in shadow early in the movie,
Yeah.
and with modern eyes you're like, hey, that's John Lithgow, he must be
Yeah.
important. Like it's like what the, like some of the suspense is taken out. It's really interesting, like to see Lithgow play like a serial killer, though, like a psychopath. It's, normally I think of him as having more dad energy than that, and or being more comedic, even like Third Rock from the Sun. But in this, I mean, he does it without overdoing it. Palma's good. I feel like he really reins his actors in and like gives them just enough because like there's this off-puttingness to John Lithgow's performance, but like it's not the thing where it's like, oh well, this guy's obviously giving serial killer vibes. Like if I were there, I would immediately not trust this guy, sort of things. It
Well, it's so compelling of a character in this situation because you really think it's going to be like a mystery of like political tomfoolery or espionage or something, but it's really just this guy happens to be fucking crazy and he's a complete monkey wrench in this kind of traditional thriller mystery kind of story. It just throws everything against the wall because like this guy has a thirst for killing and it just is not what I expected. And you're it kind of at first I thought, well, is this going to undercut? I was looking forward to more of like a figuring out who's behind it. But the guy who is behind it, who wasn't intending for this politician to get killed, is like, whoa, you never contact me again. You are crazy. And I was very compelled by that aspect.
No, because it makes it seem so much bigger than it is, you know. And like by not showing us everything, movies can do that. I don't want to see, all of it. I don't want to see the entire Rube Goldberg machine. That's part of movie magic, and I think that applies to any story. Like by letting me imagine things, it's like we don't know exactly like who wanted to tarnish this guy's reputation. Was it a like another politician? Was it like business interest? We don't get that because the movie, for the most part, with some exceptions, is like pretty closely tied to like what's his name, Jack, his point of view. Um
Yeah.
and it's I mean, we do get some scenes with John Lithgow as like the killer, like doing that, but like for the most part, it's pretty close to Jack. So like
And
we
also
don't
when you
get the
do
whole
see him,
story.
it's fake outs. Like you're like, is this the girl? Is she getting killed? No, it's just another blonde woman. And then you're like, well, maybe he thought it was her and got confused, but then he kills another blonde woman that he while he's waiting on her to show up to the train station. You're like, oh my God.
No, he and also every old movie are like it must have been a lot easier to kill people back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, if I had been born in 1970, I would have become a hitman and invested in Microsoft. That would have been a
You
strap.
heard it here first.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, guys, just want to come out. I was the Zodiac killer. It was me and Ted Cruz.
Yeah,
But
that blurred out notebook you just held up is all your secrets of how
yeah,
you
this is
killed
all my
people before.
secrets and murder victims, not notes I took on this movie.
Yeah.
This composition notebook I bought at Dollar Tree. But the no, but that's the thing because I think I didn't really get this while watching the movie. It's just one of those little plot details that kind of escaped me because I was focused on other parts of the story. Like basically, he was trying to make it look like copycat killings or like serial killings to like just so they wouldn't tie her murder to the politician, you know,
Yeah.
because she's a loose end that needs to be tied up. So he's like, it's the weirdest way of it's like if I wanted my mom to not notice the vase I broke while she was at work, so I break two more vases to like not so she doesn't see that vase. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It's
But I
like
guess it does by the end of the movie.
we could just like but it's such a at the end of the day a real non-issue because the only thing at stake here is the family learning that he was with a prostitute. And this guy thinks that's worth killing multiple people over to hide.
Well, it's one of those things, and this is where your imagination goes wild. Was this guy recommended as like, hey, this guy can help you like do political dirt and like dig up dirt or whatever, and then like some wires got crossed in the communications, and he didn't realize it was hiring a hitman. He was
Yeah.
like, maybe he was like, I want you to shoot some footage. He was like, you want me to shoot him? Okay, maybe it was like that, something like goofy like that. But, but I don't
But
know.
yeah, it's like crazy. And like also John Travolta, that'd be weird if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, but his character saves the woman out of the car after it's crashes in after the tire's been shot out. This was not supposed to happen this way. And he pulls her out and then they both go to the hospital and he first of all, it's funny how quickly she's like talking to him and he's like, "Well, we can have a drink sometime." It's like
Oh
she's
yeah,
very
he this it's like he's like, well, I didn't roofie her, the doctor did, so I can flirt with her now. Like it's a weird,
she's
like,
like barely coherent. It's
yeah,
like,
dude, it's like so you just woke up from the dentist and then John Travolta's hitting on you, but
but it's also
but also he's John
it
Travolta.
is kind of endearing that he does care to make sure she's all right, makes her sit back down on the bed and stuff like that.
Well, the guy risked his life to dive in and
Yeah.
save, like so. I mean, we do get a lot of like character development. I was like, this guy is definitely rough around the edges, but like ultimately, he is like to a fault. Like cares about doing the right thing.
Yeah, and not just there, but also like whoever was working for the politician, what's his name? McRyan, I think, or something.
mm,
I think that was his name. Yeah, McRyan,
yeah,
who died and was going to run for the president of the United States, and even the cop in the hospital is like, hell, I'd vote for him. Oh well. So obviously it makes it seem much bigger than it is because this guy was going to run for president. But they are just focused on making the girl disappear. And it's funny that the guy's just like, hey, can you just pretend this never happens?
right. Because immediately, I mean, Jack is just like, what do you mean? Like I dived in to save this girl. I saw them careen off a bridge. It's in the new. Like, what do you mean? I can just pretend this didn't happen, you know? And I understand him not going to the papers, but what's interesting is like the detective on the case is like already has gotten orders like you don't let people know. It's like the attorney general himself was like went to him and was just like, hey, like we don't need this dirt out, even though it's like I don't know, the guy's already dead.
Yeah,
And
and let's see the rest of the movie that happened just because this guy didn't want to be seen with this girl. Like, come on.
well, I think that's part of what they're saying is like, for certain politicians to like save face, sometimes people die. Like there's some I'm trying to think about it. So Bill Clinton, when he was president, this is just an example that popped in my head. There was some like textile factory or factory with a bunch of chemicals that ended up getting bombed, like that we bombed as a country, like around the time the Monica Lewinsky scandal was breaking. And it was like the sort of conspiracy, little c conspiracy, is that like that was to get like eyeballs off of the scandal. So they carried out a military operation,
Yeah.
just things like that, of
Yeah.
like how much are we like giving to these politicians and how much are they taking from us, for bullshit, frankly. I mean, if somebody, hypothetically, if somebody I knew had like died and I learned they were cheating, I don't know what the point of bringing that up to the person's wife or spouse would be after they're already dead. It's like, it's kind of like, well, okay, even a politician, it's like, well, okay, at this
I
point.
get it, but it's like all this trouble. Like they're kind of
Yeah, but
hounding
also
him.
if the cops and feds and everybody were telling me not to, I'd probably get order and be like, well, I'm going to do it anyway just because you asked me not to. Like I wasn't,
Yeah.
I'm that kind of guy. I would do that.
Yeah.
If you tell me, me, if you tell me to go left, I want to go right just out of spite.
He agrees and then he takes her and she doesn't want to go back to her house or his house, but she wants a motel for some reason. So he's like, fuck it. And then we have the really horrible optics that she's passed out by the time they get to the motel and he's dragging her in.
I almost think this is again like De Palma playing with us.
Yeah.
And like maybe, he's trying to show what a nice guy he is by not raping her, I
Oh wow,
guess.
look at this guy. He's not
No,
a
dude,
rapist.
knight in shining armor. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But
It also
also
shows how dialed in he is.
he is very dialed in immediately, and it's one of these things where it's not a huge, it doesn't ruin my enjoyment of the movie, but I'm like, A, it's crazy that they let him keep those tapes. And B, it's crazy that they let him just like take her home, this random woman. I don't know. Both of those things are kind of crazy, especially because there's so much more attempts at cover-ups going, because he
Yeah.
tells them I have the thing on audio. Jet tells the whoever's interrogating him that.
Yeah.
But I guess they just don't take it, or they make I don't know. That's not a gaping plot hole. That is something that like strained credulity for me a bit. But
Well, I think they figure, well, it's not video, it's just audio. So like they don't think they don't know that the tire was blown out. They
that
just
is
think that
true.
he
They
crashed.
also just think like, oh, well, it was a blowout. There's no story.
As
Um,
long as he doesn't have footage of the girl with him, then I doubt they would
right.
really
If he
care.
just has audio of the blowout, it's like, oh, whatever you hear, and maybe the detective listened to it and he's like, oh, this is nothing really, you know, because he didn't hadn't
Yeah,
trained it.
because smartly they didn't have the shot and then the blowout. It's like boom, boom, like right together. So it really is kind of you have to listen for it, and it could be one thing or it could be another.
Mm-hmm. No, because it's like 2 frames apart, you
Yeah.
know, on the cell. Um, which is, you know, I don't know, but I guess they just let people go home with. Could I just walk into a hospital and just bring a girl? I don't know. It doesn't
They
matter.
just wanted him the hell out of there. I don't know.
I think that's another thing. They wanted them both out of
It
there.
was like already a circus in there. They're just like, okay, get out, dude.
Yeah.
But when you see that the on the news that someone had a camera on it, I thought at first that this was like a disinformation thing, like, oh, we're gonna have this fake footage. I was like, did they already have someone shoot fake footage to that way if this guy goes to the cops with this audio? That's what I thought it was
That's
at
what I thought it
first.
was too, and that's good misdirection.
Yeah.
You learn it even goes deeper.
Yeah. And like the idea of like printing it out frame by frame in a magazine's interesting to me. I don't know.
I mean, that's the only way they could, I guess, distribute it. You didn't really have home video
Oh, you
back.
didn't catch it on the news? Well, it might re-air in a few hours, but here's the detailed look at it in this magazine. Yeah,
I mean that's what it was.
yeah,
And it's because the whole thing is that guy's like a frequent blackmailer, and did he? I mean, was he also hired? You know, like he was hired to film it. Was he hired by the like political opposition as well, or was that just John Lithgow?
no, I think he and his girl have been known to do that kind of thing, so I
Mm-hmm.
think they were also hired
Yeah.
to set up. Yeah, so he was also there.
Mm-hmm.
Just happened to be very interesting. But because he was yeah, because you see the kind of photos this guy takes of different girls with different people, and it's like super sleazy. Because at first you're thinking, well, this girl's just a prostitute. I like the the case is that she doesn't actually go that far. She just is there to pose for photos to get them in trouble, and she claims it never goes that far, which is a distinction. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, but then also you're like, how much can I believe this woman? Because how
Yeah,
much can I believe anybody in this movie?
and also like
At first, because this is Brian playing with tropes. You have
yeah,
him, you have her as this kind of like Hitchcocky and ingenue, like, oh, here's this like ditzy blonde woman, and she is that character trait. It doesn't change, but it is revealed like that there's other layers underneath.
yeah,
Like, she's always ditzy. There's even commentary on she's like, oh, I don't watch the news; it's too depressing. And that kills her at the end because she didn't know the news anchor's face. So that's what it gets.
hey, yeah,
Being
true.
uninformed, that's what gets you.
And she's a little dumb and naive, but you know,
Yeah, it's weird. But it's an interesting juxtaposition at Matrix Complex. Is like she is kind of naive, but also she's making money doing this.
yeah,
Um, I guess because this other guy, who knows how they ever met, um, because apparently it's like they seem to be intimate on some level because at one point they're in the apartment and the guy is using the toilet with the door open, which is, I mean, something you see after being in a relationship with somebody for a long time, not a coworker relationship.
yeah.
Um, but then also later he basically like he not basically he assaults her, you know, and she ends up hitting him on the head and knocking him out. What comes of that? Do we know what comes of that? He gets knocked out, and then
No.
is it just
Like,
a movie thing where he gets knocked out but he's not dead? It's fine.
yeah.
Okay. Um so it's like even that again, this is like that iceberg theory of like I'm imagining their relationship and how they met and like apparently like they have been intimate in the past but not anymore or something. Who knows how it wound up, you know? For all we know, she was a young prostitute and then like took this on, you
Yeah.
know?
But though I like that John Travolta, when he does get a drink with her, he sits down and she wants to know his story. And we get this flashback that he, during a job, he didn't think that this guy might get sweaty with a wire taped to his chest.
Which seems
And
like a pretty obvious oversight. I feel like people
yeah.
with wires get sweaty, but go on.
Well, I don't know. It's just like the whole unit and like the
Yeah.
batteries going. This guy getting so sweaty that it corrupted the batteries is crazy.
Yeah, that's yes,
But it
somebody
ends up
else.
getting him killed because he's talking to like a mob boss or something. And then, of course, this weighs on Jack's brain. And at first, I thought, well, it's good to have some character development here. I didn't know how much it would tie in to the movie because at the end, when she's getting wired, it's like, oh, this is going to be his redemption. And it's so the
Nope.
opposite.
But that's I think a great thing is like movies like m- scenes are more interesting when multiple pieces of information. A lot of like boring movies, it's because you're getting one piece of information and they take the breadcrumbing too literally. You know, they're
Yeah.
breadcrumbing in one direction. When you're really feeding ducks or whatever, you're throwing breadcrumbs all over the place. You're
Yeah.
not just leading it in one direction, Hansel and Gretel style. And so when you realize, like, you don't even realize the information that you're being given until it's relevant later, you know, which I also think is, I mean, it's great for suspense because then you're like, oh shit, oh, I'm connecting these dots I didn't even realize. And now, like, I'm connecting B, which, oh no, is C about to happen because then the audience starts predicting, and you don't even know that the filmmaker's been toying with you this whole. It's really good. I really enjoyed this movie. It's a
Yeah, I
great
did
thriller,
too.
man.
I think
It's
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 awesome.
it's yeah, it's so well done. No fat, dude.
It's hard not to jump to the end. It's so hard because, like,
Yeah, because it ties it all together so god
I
dang
know.
well, you know. Um, because we have jumped around. We haven't even talked about when he gets. We talked about him getting his audio wiped. We haven't talked about the shot where, in other hands, it would be so gimmicky, but it works so well here, and he's bought so much goodwill with the audience. Of the camera keeps doing 360s because he says like it's kind of like he got the idea from all the like film reels like going and spinning, but then also like the audience's head is spinning, Jack's head is spinning. It's that thing where like you're looking for your keys or whatever, and you're like pacing back and like checking
Yeah,
the same areas
totally.
twice.
It-
Like because I lose stuff all the time. I'm a complete space cadet with that sort of thing. I will um forget stuff, need to like double triple back. Like I'll like head out to my car, then head back to my room, then head out to my then head back to the house because I forgot something else. And like that so perfectly captures that like whirlwind ADHD
yes,
mindset.
I thought it was a brilliant way to build tension, and it didn't. It was not gimmicky at all. I thought,
No, I'm saying in other hands it would be gimmicky,
yeah,
but like here it works so well. And also just thinking like on another level of like having to time out the choreography, like the block of like, okay, and then like when the camera's here, you need to cue John to like come back through the door again, you know, like the complications of that. But
yeah. It's not like, okay, one thing from my place was stolen. Everything was wiped. That's so devastating. A
it's devastating.
nightmare.
Imagine if all of your YouTube videos and like everything you had on your hard drives was all wiped at the same
Yeah.
time. And also there's a murder investigation going
Yeah.
on.
Well,
It's not just your job or your creative stuff, it's everything.
and it's that like he can make a copy of the audio. Thank God he had it in his ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's easy to make a copy of an audio, but to make a copy of 16 millimeter footage, you're gonna have to go to a specialist, and he doesn't have the time. And like the reporter wants it, and the reporter is like the one person who's like, "Yeah, something's up with this. I got your back, so let's get this going."
It is interesting. This movie is almost more like, I think, maybe, again, I'm gonna just pin it on Watergate, but like this is at a time where like we saw the value of journalism as the fourth estate of government, as like questioning the other three branches of government. I know journalism professor who said used to say like we're the only profession that is like written into the Constitution of the United States because it's that important for the functioning of good government. And like this is a time when people actually believe that, and people didn't like shit on reporters and call them fake news and all
Yeah.
this. I'm not going to go into the economics of journalism and like also everything that's happening now with the White House press team. Anyway, but I think it reflects in this movie that like honestly one of the only upstanding people or people who seems to like his intuition is catching on to this and wants to expose is like the reporter. It's the newsman, and it's something different from now where like a lot of the times it's very frustrating. You have reporters or journalists in a movie and they're like almost TMZ type. They just want the scoop. I think of like Nightcrawler or something like
Yeah.
that. And both views of reporters, by the way, is pretty valid.
Totally.
I mean, here's the thing, dude. It's like any other job. You have people who are good and bad at it, and you have people who are like slimy businessmen and people who are like honest businessmen, and it's just like everybody gets lumped into this one thing. I guess it's like lawyers too. They got all get lumped into being like bastards. It's like, no, dude, they run the gamut. There's thousands of lawyers in this country. Anyway, that's my
Yeah.
rant. That's my rant.
And we see her go to her accomplice. She feels very guilty about what happened. And, the guy wanted to make some extra money and he didn't tell her, and he didn't mind risk her being in the car either, which is fucked. And then
Yeah, but he didn't know that like they were gonna get shot at.
I know, but like it was like he knew there was gonna be something, but not like, yeah, he didn't know the tire was gonna be shot out. But what I'm saying is like he says 6 grand, and it's like you're only doing all this for 6 grand. It's like Jesus, dude. And
No,
at
which
first it was she's like, oh, I thought you said it was 3 grand for like
which
come on.
even then the guy is like, we're on easy street now because it's 6 grand. So that would have been like about 3 grand was about 10, 11 grand. So let's just say 20 grand overall. So 10 grand each if he actually shared. And he's like, we're on easy street. It's like, no, dude, that's not even like a whole salary. You're acting like you'll never have to work again. That's
Yeah.
like a few months, especially in Philly, big city. This guy's living in this hotel, whatever it is, like almost like comically like working class, what like blue collar, like Paulie from Rocky, like white t-shirt, beer
Yeah.
cans everywhere, like stereotypically done. Um,
And I do feel sympathy for her. But like she's a little dumb because
she's a little too old though.
she should have just played it cool. But instead of being like, "Oh my God, I'm so guilty. I feel so upset," and like pushing back against them, it's like, okay, just like don't admit you feel guilty. Obviously, this guy doesn't give a shit, and now you have to
Right.
knock him out with a bottle. I don't know.
But yeah, but that's part of that's part of the interesting thing is like she has a moral compass, but she's doing this, unlike
I
this
know,
guy.
but like she could have hid it from him and gotten out of there and not talked to him again.
Yeah, you
But
know, and it's that thing in kind of these neo noir movies where it's like instead it's an inversion of the typical morality tale where it's like crime doesn't pay. It's like no, like narratively, what's happening is you're being punished for being a good person because being a good person is almost like instead of making the assumption that like people are mostly morally good and that crime is an aberration and that gets like its comeuppance in the end,
yeah.
you know, um, which it gets even more complicated with Scarface, and you're like, does he glorify or like condemn this sort of behavior? Because I always thought it was weird. Scarface dies at the end of this movie, but then you see like wannabe gangsters and real gangsters, to be fair, wear like Scarface shirts that are like, I felt like I saw it more like several years ago, but still,
Shit, I
it's
saw
this.
it more in like 2007.
Yeah,
Like
I
I don't
saw it
know,
more
it's
around
been a long
then.
time.
No, it's been a while, but still, it's that thing of like, what are you doing? How is media representing these crimes? That's a whole nother thing. But um, I forgot where I was going. I
No,
got
I
off.
remember waiting for the bus in seventh grade, and an eighth grader had Scarface like airbrushed onto his like Nike shoes. I was
Yeah, it
like,
was a
oh
lot of
my
like
God.
airbrush Scarface stuff from people who've like haven't seen the movie or like just didn't get the movie. There's also the
Circa
like sad part
2007.
is like it's people who it's the kind of mindset, and this was not, by the way, in our community, like in our suburb, there was not. I'm not saying there's crime. I'm not saying there wasn't crime, but it wasn't like Miami in the
No,
eight.
this was
Like
not like
yeah, it was not
this is
that
a
level.
14-year-old kid trying to act hard.
Right, exactly. That's all this was. In Little Rock, we have more organized crime. There's stuff, people are getting shot in my neighborhood, on my street, actually.
Yeah, no, we have problems
Yeah,
here.
in yours, I think.
Yeah.
It's a
Search
problem.
top 10 most dangerous cities in America. We're on it. So,
Yeah, per capita, it's kind of weird. People don't think about it, but if you keep it to yourself, it's fine. I guess. But no, you had this weird thing where like people glorify it. But anyway, my point was like, as opposed to like maybe traditional film noir, where it's like people are naturally good and like the villain maybe gets their comeuppance. It's almost positing like, what if people and systems are inherently corrupt and evil, and like you're going against the grain by being a good person, and because of that you get your comeuppance because you're not going with the natural order.
yeah,
Being good is against the natural order. That's what it is, you know. So everybody gets their comeuppance at the end.
that's devastating
Mhm.
because we get the whole thriller aspect of John Lithgow waiting for her at the station. He kills that woman who's
Mhm.
gave that quick blowjob, and then she's
Like that
coming in.
toothy one, which got cut short, I guess.
Yeah, and she's wired, so it's not like a walkie-talkie. All he can do is listen to her. He can't convey anything to her and say, "Hey, get out of there, run." Which
Right.
is,
We're talking about not the prostitute. We're talking about Sally in the
yeah, we're
second.
talking about
Yeah.
Sally at this point. And so it is this thriller aspect. I'm like, okay, what's this going to be? How is this movie going to kind of shape towards its ending? But because I've watched a lot of movies, I'm like, well, they're going to involve this liberty thing somehow because it's been throughout the whole movie. Oh, this liberty celebration's coming up. Yay. Okay, so
Right. Which is
yeah.
not a real thing. It's based on the what is it? The Mummers Parade, which is the New Year's Day parade. Because Brian De Palma is a Philadelphian, and he said when he wrote this, he already had the locations in his head because he knew the city so well. You know.
The only
Um,
reason she's not killed at this train station is divine intervention because this worker just comes out at the right second, right before she's about to get killed. So he's like, okay, we'll board the train. I'm like, well, okay. Travolta figures this out, something's up, and he takes off. But by the time they get out of the train, I'm like, well, this guy could have killed her a number of different ways, but he keeps waiting and I at first I was like worried that this was just plot contrivance bullshit. But we get the sequence where Travolta is like he doesn't get on the train, so he just loses it and gets in the car and drives. And because he's not an action hero, he crashes.
Right, which is so it's the opposite of a few months ago we did Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it has the same thing. They have to drive between subway stops.
Yeah.
John McClane is able to do it because he's John McClane.
Yeah.
But in this, he tries to drive against traffic in this parade, and it just doesn't work. It's so great. I love it. I love regular
I
guys doing
loved
regular
it.
guy stuff.
But at
Which, by the
first,
way, can I add a piece of trivia onto
yeah.
this? Apparently the whole sequence easily had to be the most expensive in the movie of the parade and all that and da da da. The negatives of that got robbed out of a truck during
Whoa.
this movie. What the making of this, they had to reshoot all of that.
What the
Um,
fuck?
of like, because it was just people like stealing stuff out of a truck. They didn't know it was film negatives for a De Palma
Okay.
film. They were just grabbing boxes out of a truck that they had to like ship it. They couldn't email or Dropbox files. They had to like drive out with all these canisters of film. And it was that sequence that they had to reshoot and do everything, which is
Imagine.
another thing. It's so funny. I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know if ironic is the word. It's not ironic actually. But it's coincidental and funny that you have this whole plot point of like, oh, all of my footage was lost, and then you lose all your footage for this film and have to like pain in the ass analog
I would
filmmaking,
be
dude.
so fucking mad.
Dude, I wouldn't you kill. You're like, here, let me get an ice pick and start stabbing people. Like I would lose it, dude.
The-
I've
but
lost like tickets I've bought or something, and I felt like I was gonna kill somebody, and that's nothing.
the way the film was escalating at the end, I was kind of feeling disappointed because I thought it was going the action movie route, the more of the thriller, action thriller. And I was like, man, I was hoping this would go a different way. And then he passes out, and I'm like, well, what the fuck? How is this woman still alive? This is so contrived that he's taking her to this area and he hasn't killed her yet. Okay, that's kind of dumb. I felt kind of disappointed at this point, and little did I know that it would completely turn everything around immediately. And what a way to do it in the most like mean, cynical way
Yeah.
for him to go run up those stairs and fight him off, but it's already too late. You're too late. Nothing you can do. She's already been killed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you get the argument that like, hey, at least he stopped this murderer from killing someone else.
Yeah,
I guess that's
this
the
guy does
only
not
thing.
need to be out in the streets anymore.
No, and he even like starts carving like Liberty Bells into people to like make a new alias because he's just it's weird. It's almost like he's like the only guy who knows that he's in a movie in a weird way. And so he's acting theatrical and everybody else is trying to act normal. Everybody else is an everyman or like a normal politician or just a cop trying to do their job. And then he's the only one who knows he's in a movie. He's like, no, I have to be like a crazy serial killer guy and like do everything.
I was like, I do a lot of my notes. Sometimes I'll pause it, sometimes I don't, but I usually do voice to text
Mhm.
to myself to make it easier on myself. Sometimes I write it physically, but in my notes, it literally says she got killed, so I take back what I was going to say.
Which is funny because like I wasn't disappointed because I legitimately just knowing the tone of this movie and everything, I legitimately didn't know if she was going to make it out or not. You have to as a filmmaker, and not even just as someone who watches a lot of movies. This is anybody. I know a lot of people they want a happy ending to the point like I think it's a problem. Some people would argue not on a lot of like Goodreads or a lot of these like book websites. It'll say like happy ending guaranteed or something for like books you read. I'm kind of like,
Ugh.
well, okay, well, what's the point? And that's people who are buying like paperback cowboy romances set in Wyoming or whatever, like Hallmark stuff. But is the problem with a lot of movies, is like, and so as a filmmaker, even if it's going to be a happy ending, you need to have enough cynical shit happen along the way, even if it's supposed to be a happy ending, for me to think there's even a 20% chance
Yeah.
that you might not. And also as a film goer, like I suspend disbelief. I give like the benefit of the doubt to the filmmakers a lot of the time. Where like even if in the back of my head, like obviously this is going to be a happy ending movie, I still like want to be on the edge of my seat. So I'm like a doubting Thomas of like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it is.
of course.
You have to do that to enjoy movies.
Yeah.
It's suspension of disbelief, which is
But
like
the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, oh, well, he's got to have his redemption because of that time with the sting operation with the cops. But
no,
nope.
no. He keeps because I don't know. It's like he's both good and bad at his job. I don't know. He also just has impossible jobs to give. But it is one of the great movie endings because you see her
I like
die.
that shot where he's holding the body with the fireworks above him. It's one of the best shots I've ever seen in my
Me
life.
too. And I was like, was that in camera? Was that like a projection behind or like a how did it, and it composited? Like
Yeah.
I was wondering because they were talking about lighting, dude, the amount of lighting work they had for that scene. He was like, yeah, we one time we spent all night lighting it and then we were done and then it was morning. So it was just like
Yeah.
the amount of stuff you had to do. And because all through this movie, because it takes a lot of influence from Giallo, the Italian gelato films, and especially like Dario Argento and Suspiria, like you get that like Technicolor colored lighting, which a lot of times like overuse of color lighting in movies can like be very contrived or it can feel contrived to me. But in this, like he conveniently has a bunch of like red, white, and blue lighting all over the movie. But it's almost like this like ghastly, murderous red that's like, the blood of the American dream. Like it's that sort of like
Yeah.
inversion again, like this country was built on genocide, like that. He's like doing that.
It
But no,
not only did it turn around so hard for me there, but like the actual ending. I was almost about to stand up and start clapping. I was
yeah,
like, "Oh my God."
so good.
Because like the falling action, he's in the snow, true Sigma male style, like listening to her death over and over again. I'm like, oh my God, dude, this is awesome. But like this man finally found the perfect scream and he uses it for this sleazy horror movie. And now this movie is mirroring how sleazy it felt at the beginning, at the ending, and it's just come full circle. This guy's
Right.
completely gone.
Yeah, talk about using your trauma for your art. Jesus Christ.
How more desensitized could you be? I don't know.
I mean, he's not at the end because we hear him like covering his
Well, that's
ears.
true. That's true.
So like he's clearly, and then you start to think like, why did he do that? Was he thinking like this is the only way I could get immortalized, or was it like he's like, oh, I'm about to get fired and all of my tapes are wiped and I need sound and this is all I have?
I'm gonna use
Like,
real death
yeah,
in this movie. Like,
and
maybe
it's
that's
so
how, like, at this point, how he views this movie now. It's completely different now. He's like, fuck this sleazy, shitty, exploitative bullshit. I'm going to put a real death sound in here just to prove my point. I
mhm.
don't know.
Or like stick it to the audience for wanting to see it. I don't know. There's different ways you could read it.
Yeah.
It was desperation. It was pain. It was traumatically informed. Maybe in a weird way, he was trying to memorialize her. Um, who knows? But it's absolutely. I love a movie where people don't change. Where he's I like an inverted character arc where they don't improve, and that's what this is.
Yep.
Ballsy.
It's blowout.
Yeah, dude. It's I can see why this movie wasn't that successful. It was underperformed. Um I'm just looking here. It says 18 million budget, about 14 million box office. Um I can see why people would be bummed out by this movie and like not
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
see it. Like imagine you expect Saturday Night Fever and you get Blowout. But it's great and I loved it.
Totally. I thought it was fantastic. I still prefer Phantom of the Paradise, but this is a great movie. So, yeah, that's Blowout. I guess that wraps up our conversation, huh?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to support us, we have many avenues to do that. I have a new video essay out now. We have over 175 episodes of this show. I'm sure there's plenty of movies on there that you guys could find that you have seen and or want to see or share with somebody who has also seen that movie and you're like, "Can you believe these guys reviewed this movie? I haven't seen anyone else review this movie. Wait until we do Last Year at Marienbad. That'll be crazy." But in the meantime, you can follow Scott at Scott K Comedy and follow me at the Maury Line on Instagram. And there, yeah, check our description. There's a few links there you might want to check out. Anyway, next week, I don't know. We're a little out of order right now. But
Those are
thanks
my
for listening. We'll
screams.
see you guys next week.